Mike describes himself as a stubborn optimist and a former fighter pilot turned serial sustainability entrepreneur who built two award-winning companies in the climate space. So today's going to be really interesting about carbon accounting, carbon neutral, and what this means for business owners. It's really on the cutting edge if you're thinking about electrical vehicles, ESG, and all of that. So welcome, Mike, to the show. Welcome.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you on. Really, most people don't really understand, carbon accounting, but they can understand that, we're facing tornadoes and hurricanes and floods and, climate change. So tell us more about yourself and how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Great. So the name is Mike Smith, as you've already mentioned. I'm the CEO of a company called Aclymate. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and when I was a kid, I experienced a wildfire that put up a mushroom cloud. It was just really memorable to me as a child, and everybody told me it'd grow back. And so I said, what do I know? Great, I'm a kid. I joined the Navy, saw the world. I was an F-18 pilot in the U.S. Navy for about 12 and a half years active duty, which was just a real fun way to spend your 20s. And in 2010, I got married. In 2011, I brought my wife to Idaho to kind of show her where I'd grown up. And we went by the scar of that fire, and it wasn't coming back. And it just got under my skin to the point where I decided to leave what a lot of people kind of consider to be a dream career, to get out and to go find meaning with my life. And so I left the Navy and about as soon as I could, about 2014. And I started my first company called RenewWest, which was about leveraging carbon markets for post-fire reforestation. It was kind of a tough time to get into a carbon market company, but I felt very committed to the fundamentals and developed some expertise. I was an advisor to the U.S. Climate Alliance, for example. And big claim to fame at RenewWest was the largest carbon-focused reforestation project in U.S. history. We planted 2 million trees in Northern California, and I'm just as proud as can be of that. RenewWest is doing great. It's off to the races, but I started a second company, initially internal to RenewWest, and then spun it out in 2021 called Aclymate. And Aclymate is climate management software for small businesses. We help them, small to medium-sized businesses, figure out what their footprint is, reduce it when it makes where it makes sense, offset it when it does make sense for that, and then report that work to the people that care about it: employees, investors, and other stakeholders. And so Aclymate's been doing great. We've gone through a well-regarded business accelerator called Techstars, and now we're out, helping people with their problems. So that's a bit of my background. Most of my hobbies beyond that just involve being a dad. So happily married father of two great kids, and my wife and I really enjoy spending time with them.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. I know, especially after the COVID pandemic, a lot of countries started really focusing on climate change. And so tell us more, for example, what is carbon accounting and why is it so important for businesses?
Sure. So everybody has an impact upon the environment, and we tend to think that we know what our major factors are, but we generally make poor guesses. And so, I'm a data guy. I was trained as an engineer, and so providing people the data in an approachable and easy way is what carbon accounting is. We measure where your footprint is in a way without you having to become an expert. And so that uncovers some pretty interesting things. You'll find people that some of our customers have really wanted to lean into sustainability, and so they have whole green teams of employees that are really focused on a recycling program, and they think that that's how they're going to really make an impact on the climate. And it turns out that it may be a lot of flying associated with one of their executives. Or we have another company that essential to their business model is they fly people in from international locations to do on-site training, and they thought there was just nothing they could do about their footprint. And they came to realize that actually a big part of what they were doing on the climate was associated with a couple of their employees that were commuting via pickup 40 miles each direction. And so there's a lot of assumptions that we make when we don't lean into the data. And so how do we make the data accessible and approachable is what carbon accounting is all about, especially for the small to medium-sized business owner.
Yeah.
And then why your business should care is maybe it's part of your ethos. But beyond, why you personally should care is it's good for your business. Generally, reducing carbon emissions also indicates where you have business inefficiencies. You're probably spending too much on your electric bill, for example, or you may be having somebody that's flying just a little too much and you can save some money that way. But even beyond kind of the bottom line stuff, you're going to have to here increasingly. If you want to sell to the climate generation, millennials and Gen Z that really care about this stuff, or employ any of them, they're starting to demand this kind of work. And it's a way for you to start to really break out from your competitors in that regard. If you are part of a supply chain for a large public company in any way, shape, or form, that reporting is going to be required. If you're raising investment, increasingly investors are going to require this accounting. It's just part of the business. And so we like to think of Acclimate as like get on the bus or get run over. Like it's you might as well get ahead of the trend.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that there's so much misinformation out there, and especially because I know for a long time the oil companies were saying that climate change, global warming is, it's a fad, just like the tobacco companies back then said smoking doesn't cause cancer. And then Al Gore came out with this movie which really exposed the truth. So what is in terms of politics and policy, what is being done on that front?
Yeah, it's funny that, and it's great that as a physician, you go to the cigarettes cause cancer. I use that all the time as my kind of, we all grew up, we knew it was all junk science. There was a bunch of people that just kind of believed the lies and were willing to kind of go with it because they, were resistant to change. And then we had a whole generation of people that changed and got tired of their grandmother dying of cancer for dumb reasons. And they just got sick of the lies, right? And so you're seeing a lot of that in the climate space too, right? Which is that there's this rising demographic shift of people that have just grown up their entire lives knowing about climate change and just getting sick of the lies. And that's having some really profound effects. And so, when I first started at RenewWest, like climate was like an 8th or 9th or maybe 10th level issue for people. Like it was like something they kind of cared about, but they didn't vote. Like they had like priority issues. You have climate voters now. People that like this is their number one priority, and it's not a small percentage of the population. And so that's changing. One of the places like politically that you see changes, like the Pew Research did a survey of people around climate. And in our highly, bifurcated political environment, the one place where Republicans and Democrats start to agree is amongst younger Republicans and Democrats care about climate, both care about climate. And it's the difference between younger and older Republicans. And you're starting to see that shift. How they want to engage with it's a little bit different, but they're not denying its existence any longer. And so just like the smoking causes cancer thing, in the span of a couple of years, things have rapidly shifted. When I was, when I was a young person, like, you could still smoke in restaurants, and there was still occasionally an airplane you could smoke in. And then, it went to the point where you couldn't even smoke outside of bars in a 10-year period, like not even near the door. You had to leave the bar and go away to have a cigarette. And that's a good thing, but like, I think it shows how rapidly these things can change. And about how important it is to, like I said, to get on that bus now before you get run over by it later.
And then what does the average person need to know about carbon offset?
Yeah. So part of the reason I started this was I felt like that we had made a lot of carbon accounting and carbon offsetting really inapproachable to the layperson. That it was only something that was built for like Fortune 500, like sustainability officers. And it just didn't sit right with me. That's why we built Aclymate. And so the first thing that you need to know about offsets is that they're not a substitute for actually doing the work on emissions reductions. Like the first thing that you need to do is do the accounting, figure out what your baseline is, and start to identify the places where you can reduce your footprint. That's the way that you demonstrate like meaningful improvement. And that's what the people that are creating the pressures for you to do this work, they're going to expect of you. The second thing about offsets is that generally, you'll probably want to buy from the big four registries: American Carbon Registry, Climate Action Reserve, Gold Standard, or Verra, sometimes known as VCS. And those have independent auditing processes. They have processes for example, if you buy from a forestry project, they make the forestry project overproduce. So in case there's a fire, there's a kind of reserve of additional offsets that are, in the system. And just buying from those registries is generally a good thing. And then think about like how, because a lot of the reasons that you buy offsets is to tie into kind of generally either part of your ethos or marketing and branding, and think about who your audience is, right? And so if you're buying offsets for, to help with like your employees, because if you're trying to, retain, talented young adults, they probably want something close by, or that has like a good social story, and so you should know who you're going to. If you're doing it for like an environmental justice component, you might want to think about like, okay, what are my priorities there? Part of our software actually helps to provide that. We have like a survey, and we'll help you to kind of filter out which projects make the most sense for you. And that's pretty much it. And then the last part I would say is just buy from somebody that you trust. One of the things we're proud about is having like a leading selection of offsets available. You're going to have a hard time finding a greater selection of offset projects available anywhere on the web.
Yeah. And for businesses interested in purchasing an offset, how do they know what they're purchasing isn't fake?
That's part of the trust component. If you're dealing with somebody that's reputable and that has connections to a registry, and they should have integrated accounting, that will help you out a lot. You can't buy from the registries directly, generally, and so you have to go through some third party. Trusted brand names is the place to start. So that's where you want to go. This is these it's quite interesting because especially in terms of climate change, it seems bad right now, but how bad is it really, and how bad can it get if governments don't do anything? So to get a little technical, so the UN body that's responsible for kind of collecting all the science and consolidating it is known as the IPCC, and they created these, they called them RCP pathways, relative concentration pathways, based upon a variety of factors: population growth, the ability of us to decarbonize energy sources, industrial production, et cetera. In some of the worst scenarios, like an RCP 8.5 scenario, there are huge chunks of India that like physically become unlivable. Like there's something known as a too hot to live, like a 35 degrees C wet bulb temperature, which is where the exterior temperature, like, it doesn't matter like how good you are sweating or sitting in the shade or having a fan or hydrated. Perspiration actually only warms you up. The humidity, the dew point's that high. And so there's some pretty catastrophic stuff. When that happens, you're starting to talk about like huge displacements of people, both internally and then to move, across borders. You have like destabilization of national security. Like it gets catastrophic. Cataclysmic really is more the word. Thankfully, in the last 5 to 6 years, the world started to bend that curve. And that's really good. RCP 8.5 is not the most likely scenario. That's like a 4 to 5 degrees C warming scenario. The more likely scenario right now is about 3 degrees of warming. 3 degrees of warming still has a lot of problems. You're going to see a lot of environmental collapse. You'll see like, for example, like most of Europe's agricultural system right now wouldn't work. They would have to like build out significant irrigation structures and things along those lines. You'd have massive die-off of fish in like the Black Sea. The Western United States becomes essentially unfarmable. And so you're going to have like huge shifts in like agricultural production. So that's a really bad scenario. The goal since the Paris Climate Accords has been that we want to target 1.5 C of total warming. And right now we're at 1.1. So we don't have a whole lot left. And they said the worst case scenario is about 2 C. Mm-hmm. So we still have a lot to go. 3 C is way warmer than we can accept. 2 C is really warmer than we should accept. And 1.5 C is about as good as we could absolutely hope for. And so there's a lot of room there. 1.5 C still has problems. We're still going to start, see some real strain on a lot of different systems, but things will probably work out okay.
Yeah. Another question that I get from the audience is, what is the term greenwashing, and what does it mean?
So it's an important question for your audience to ask themselves. So greenwashing is the concept of trying to display that you're claiming sustainability when not really being sustainable. You brag about how you're using renewable energy, but you're not really sourcing renewable energy. It just happens to be the utility company that's doing that anyways. Or, we have a recycling program that, we participate in, but meanwhile, like sending a ton of waste to landfill. Like there's a lot of things there. And so it's important because this younger generation, the climate generation, completely intolerant of greenwashing. They have they're very much they want verifiability. They want to know that you're doing what you say you're doing. And we've built a little bit of that into our software, which is we actually have we provide you with your own sustainability page that you can share to show that you're doing this work. They want a demonstration of action. And it's not just enough to make a claim, you've got to show.
And the next question is, for example, greenwashing once a business becomes carbon neutral, what is the best way to market this to its stakeholders without appearing to be greenwashing?
Yeah, that's part of that, I think, starts with leadership, which is that a leadership actually makes a public statement about like what their values are and why they're doing this. And it's one of those, prove it scenarios. So when we looked at the system out there for companies that wanted to like reduce their footprint and or buy offsets, it was very reliant upon them to make the claim and to back it up. They had to like do their own accounting. There were very few public accounting structures available to them. And then if they did the accounting, then they had to go out and buy offsets. And then usually they'd have to write up like a press release or a blog post or something along those lines. And it was just really like cumbersome. Right. And if you're a small to medium sized business owner, you don't have time for all that stuff. Like you want to do the right thing and it should be easy. And so one of the things that we built in there is that we wanted to have it all integrated in one piece of software where you do the accounting, you can buy the offsets, you get a certification from our company that you can put on your website. It's a widget that ties back to ours, and it actually helps to demonstrate like where you've bought the offsets from, how long you've been doing it. It demonstrates all of that stuff. And so with, pretty quickly you can do that demonstration. You have that link you can place right on your website, and anybody that has questions, they click on it and it shows, what's your current accounting.
Yeah.
Obviously we have to be, careful of business confidentiality and a couple other, important things around, customer privacy. But there is, some stuff that we can display very quickly and immediately and make the claim real.
Very fascinating discussion. I learned so much about, this area, and it has so much because Elon Musk said, one of the biggest crises that we face is climate change, and we'd start to see what's happening, and the other is artificial intelligence. We're starting to see that as well. So how can people follow you, contact you, ask you questions, visit your website, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So as again, the name is Mike Smith. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can search my company on LinkedIn as well, or on the web. Company's name is Aclymate, Aclymate. You can go to aclymate.com and contact us there. So those are some of the primary points for being able to kind of follow along with me. I do post to LinkedIn as well if you want to follow me as an individual.
Yeah.
You can email us at hello@aclymate.com, hello@aclymate.com. And then if you'd like to email me personally, it's just mike@aclymate.com. And I'd love to help you in any way I can.
Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, thank Mike for a fantastic discussion. All of his resources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to follow him on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, as well as his website, acclimate.com. And with that, thanks so much. And it was a great discussion.
Thanks for having me.